Vanakkam Uday Sahay. This is Kiruthika from southern side of Tamil Nadu, and I belong to Ambattar or Ambattar community. This is a great opportunity to talk with Uday Sahay, was an IPS officer who took voluntary retirement in search of his North Star. He is a known communication consultant today, and he has authored 8 books so far. Having handled a series of districts in Delhi as DCP, he joined Prashar Bharati as Deputy Director General in Directorate of Information and Publicity, and as Additional Director General in the Organizing Committee of Commonwealth Games 2010. Since 2010, Mr. Sahay runs a communication consultancy company and runs a publishing house. In addition, Mr. Sahay is a wide photographer, and he held several photo exhibitions in India and abroad. So I think today I'm very blessed to interact with you, sir. And I have a curiosity to know about the Kayasth books. Shall we start the interview, sir?
Oh, by all means. But before we start the interview, thank you very much, Kiruthika, for such a generous introduction. And let me have the privilege of introducing my interviewer, that is Kiruthika Satyamurthy, who is an illustrious teacher in Tamil Nadu, in a place called Salem. And she has a deep interest in the research, legacy and heritage of her community, and that's how we connected. So I feel equally privileged to be interviewed by you, and this will be a great opportunity for us to interact through you, through your window, through the mind, through the window of your mind, to the community at large in Tamil Nadu. So thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. So my first question, before starting the interview, I would like you to first share the basic facts about the books with our audience, sir.
Yeah, first thing first, facts are sacrosanct. So the book is called Kayasth, an Encyclopedia of Untold Stories. It is what we call illustrious volume, which runs into 400 pages. It has a lot of photographs, it has a lot of illustrations, it has a lot of paintings, and all kinds of medium which go into making in this book. In addition, the striking feature of the book is that most of the contributors are from the Kayasth community, belonging to different parts of the country. And whether they are illustrators, whether they are content creators, whether they are photographers, whether they are painters, they are from different sub-caste of the Kayasth community, not only from the Hindi heartland, but also beyond. So these are the 2 important facts about the book.
Okay, sir. And sir, professionally, you are based an IPS officer. Then what inspired and motivated you to write the book, sir?
Well, broadly, Kiruthika, you start your life and you basically aspire to satisfy your basic needs, like your physiological need, your security need. And as you move on in life, once these needs are satisfied, you start looking for higher needs, what we call self-actualization need. In my life also, I realized that, and these needs are of a very, very fundamental kinds. They lead you to questions like, who am I? They lead you to questions like, where I have come from, what is my history, etc. When I started getting into these kinds of questions, I realized that the community to which I belong has a huge heritage of thousands of years. And maybe I thought this is the time to give back to the community by getting into the deeper history of the community, deeper heritage of the community, deeper legacy of the community, and communicate the same to my community members across the country. So that was the major, I would say, driving force. And in the process, 2 things I focused upon. One was the revisiting the identity called Kayasth. we didn't create any new identity as such, but we revisited our old identity, number one. And number two, we looked at the issue of conserving the great heritage of our community, which runs more than 2,500 years in history. So these are the two major areas which I focused upon in the book.
Okay, sir. Great, sir. Great, sir. And what is the main genre? What kind of things that the book covers, sir?
Well, the book has, as I explained to you, in short, it is revisiting the identity issue of the community. Number two, it aims at conserving the tangible and intangible heritage of the community spread across 21 states in India. That's one. And in the process, it looks at the history of Kayasthas. It looks at the mythologies surrounding Kayasthas. It looks at the legal status of the community in the eyes of law amongst Kayasthas. It looks at the cultural practices of Kayasthas, the rituals that they follow during their death, marriage, and birth. It looks at the brand identity issue of Kayastha. It looks at the food and the cuisine which has a huge interesting range amongst Kaistas and so on. So there are 15 chapters, and this is not just the collection of big Kaistas name. Of course, there are two chapters, one on role of Kaistas in the freedom struggle, and the other chapter is on illustrious Kayastha, and the chapter is called Hall of Fame. But these are two chapters which are very important, and there you get a range of Kaistas across the country. But other chapters take you to a wider issues, the deeper issues like migration and stuff. So this is what the book is all about.
Okay, sir. Really, you are doing very good job, sir. And you talked of 3 types of Kayasthas in India. Tell us something about Kayasthas in South India, especially in Tamil Nadu.
Surely, Kiruthika, it will be my pleasure to speak about the Kayasthas in South. But before that, for a bigger picture, for the larger picture, you need to understand the Kayasthas elsewhere. In fact, that should be the beginning point to my mind. And there, broadly, I categorize Kayasthas in 3 categories. One, what I call Chandragupta Vanshiye Kayasthas. Second, what we call Chandraseniye Kaistas. And third, what we call Chitraseniye Kaistas. The Chitragupta Vanshiye Kaistas are mostly in the Hindi states. And also in Tamil Nadu, like Karnigar, if you know. Karnigar in Tamil Nadu, they actually worship Chitragupta Swami. There is a very famous Chitragupta Swami temple in Kanchipuram. And the official custodian of the temple, authorized by the state, by the Tamil Nadu Temple Endowment Board, is a member of the community itself. That's the bylaw there. In addition, I'm told that in Tamil Nadu, there are small and big 15 Chitragupta temples. And that itself is an amazing range, because we didn't know this until we got into the deeper part of the Karnagi's world of Chitragupta. That's one. That's the Chitragupta Vanshiya in South. But if you go to Hyderabad, there is a Chitragupta temple, traditional Chitragupta temple. If you go to other parts of maybe Karnataka also has a Chitragupta temple. You go to Telangana also has a Chitragupta temple. Maybe they are smaller in shape and size. But in the Hindi heartland areas, there are more than 40 temples spread across Bihar, Uttar Pradesh, Madhya Pradesh, Rajasthan, Uttarakhand, and other Hindi-speaking states. So this is one major chunk. Now, talking about the second type, which is Chandraseniye Kayas Prabhu, which we call CKPs. They are mostly concentrated in Maharashtra and also partly in Madhya Pradesh, some parts of Madhya Pradesh, and some parts of Gujarat. They are very, very illustrious people in their own right. They are called Chandraseniya Kayasth Prabhu because they don't directly worship Chitragupta as an ancestral god as such, but they worship their chief ancestral character called Chandraseni, who was a great king, ancient king that we find in history. There are many important names that you can see among them. I'll come to that later. So this is the major chunk of Western India. The third chunk, if you look at, takes you to the Eastern India, the Bengal. Actually, as on date, Bengal has the biggest chunk of Kayasthas in the country, even today. And there are different shades of Kayasthas in Bengal. There are what we call Maulik Kayasthas. Maulik means original settlers. Then there are Radi Kayasthas. Then there are Kuleen Kayasthas, and there are shades and shades. And the Vaidyas also, though there is a little controversy surrounding that, Vaidyas in Bengal also are Kayasthas, and they have a deeper and very, very intense historical connection with Ambatas elsewhere. I'll come to that when I talk about Ambatars and Ambatas later. So this is the Eastern India, which would majorly in Bengal, also in Assam, also in, say, Odisha, and a bit in Tripura. So broadly, these are three types. Now coming to South, I would focus on Tamil Nadu and also touch upon Karnataka and Andhra and Telangana a bit. But if you look at Tamil Nadu, there are three major categories of Kaistas that we have been able to focus upon. One is a community called Karnagir. And the Karnagir, as I explained, they worship Chitragupta Swami temple. And they are traditionally in the job of what we call Lekhak, that is writer, Ganak, that is accountant, and Shikshak, that is teacher, that you are. So broadly, you will find Karnagirs into these three categories. Of course, with the passage of time, with modernization and diversification of jobs happening, many of them have become doctors, engineers, management gurus, etc., etc. But the primary focus is on these three occupations. Then the second category in Tamil Nadu that we have been able to clearly identify is the Mudaliyars. And Mudaliyars are the richest and the most prosperous community of Tamil Nadu. In fact, I was pretty surprised and pleasantly surprised when I met their association chief, who introduced himself by saying that, look, our community's turnover is 7 lakh crore. And that's the kind of confidence they have. They are politically also pretty active in good positions, etc. The third and this category is linked to a wider category called Mathurs of Mathura. Like I forgot to tell you that Karnagirs are connected with the wider category called Karnas in Bihar, who are Korna in Odisha, who are called Karnam in Andhra and Telangana, and who are also called Srishti Karnam. And in Karnataka, they are called Karunika. And of course, in Tamil Nadu, they are called Karunigar. If you look at dissect the word of their names, you can clearly see that Karnam word is appearing. And the Karnam word in Sanskrit means the writer's class. Primarily, they were all writer's class who migrated at a particular point of time in Magadha Bayar, spilled over to Odisha, where they were called Karnam. All these Mohantis and Patnayaks, even the present chief minister is a Kayasth. They are all Karnams, and Karnams are writers' class in Odisha. A small group also spilled over to Bengal, and they are called Karnis. Then they spilled over to Andhra, and there they are called Karnams, and some of them are also called Srishti Karnam. Then further they have spilled over to Karnataka, where they are called Karunika, and finally Karunikars in Tamil Nadu. So this is a very interesting lineage of Karunikars that you see, and they derive their lineage with from Karans in Bihar. So that's the connect. So Karnas are connected to them. The Mathurs are connected to Madaliyar. Now we come to the third category, which is the most important category, because the member of that category is actually interviewing me, that is Kiruthika. This is a category called Ambatas. And Ambatars, let me explain to you the source of how we connected to Ambatar. While we were doing this research, we came across three major scholars, and they're all pan-India level famous people. All the historians know them, all the archaeologists know them. I would like to start with DC Sarkar. DC Sarkar talked about the migration of Ambatas. And then you had BP Sinha. BP Sinha's stature is very big. BP Sinha is a guy whose evidence, archaeological evidence, was picked up by even Supreme Court while deciding Ram Janmabhoomi case. And BP Sinha gave a beautiful trajectory of the migration of Ambastas from south of Kashmir right up to Bihar on the one side and up to Salem and South Travancore on the other side. I'll explain to that separately, but that's the second most important source. The third important source is Chitrarekha, Dr. Chitrarekha Gupta, who was the head of the archaeology department of Calcutta University, and she also talked about the migration of Ambastas from South Kashmir up to Mekala. Now, what is Mekala? Mekala is a region around Ujjain, and Mekala word was used by the Greek historians. And it took us almost 6 months to clearly dissect what exactly Mekala means, which is this location. We realized that they are talking about Mahakala. And Mahakala is a place which is Ujjain of today. So they came from Kashmir, south of Kashmir, migrating down to Mekala first. From Mekala, they went into two directions. One went to Bihar, the major chunk, and a minor chunk went further down south. They first, concentrated in a place called Salem of today, and some of them went to South Travancore. And we are told that subsequently they also spilled over to Sri Lanka, where they are called Ambaltas. Ambaltan is another variation of Ambatas, and they are found there till date. So this is the scenario of Kaistas in South India. Now, if you go to Karnataka, Karnataka interestingly has a huge connection with Karnas of Bihar. And if you talk about to the members of Karna community in Bihar, they will all tell you that we came from Karnataka. And actually, one of their major kings called Karnat, who set up his kingdom near Birbhum in Nepal today, he did come from Karnataka. So they remembered that very well. But unfortunately, they remembered the reverse migration from Karnataka to Bihar. They forgot about the onward migration from Bihar to Karnataka. So if you ask them that question, they are a little uncomfortable because there is a broken memory. So that's the Karnataka scenario. In Andhra Pradesh, things are a little more complex. In Andhra Pradesh, you have three shades of Kayastha. One is the Hyderabad Kayasthas. Hyderabad Kayasthas actually came to Hyderabad about 200 years back. And initially, the Mathurs came in big number. Then you had Saksenas, and finally you had Srivastavas. And they were all patronized by the Nizam rulers there. And their lifestyle also more or less got completely, Persianized and Islamicized. If you look at their food habit and your speech pattern, etc., they look quite royal. And to that extent, they were very, very distinct. But people who studied the Kayasthas in Hyderabad, they failed to understand that these are the migrant Kaistas who came 200 years back. But what about the native Kaistas? For example, if you look at Venkaiah Naidu ji's background, and if you look at the Hindi Wikipedia on entry on Venkaiah Naidu, it clearly says that he belonged to Nellore, and Nellore is a place in Andhra, as you know, and he belongs to the Kayasth in bracket Kamma community of Andhra Pradesh. We checked up that with one of his nephews, and he also corroborated that yes, they are this. We are still trying to find similar connection amongst Reddys and Raos. In fact, Rao, if you look at in uh, Andhra, they are called Karnam Niyogi Brahmins. Now, Karnam word is associated with Kayasthas. Niyogi means the one who actually do the priestly job among Brahmins. So they are the ritual practitioners among Brahmins, but they have a Kayastha legacy also, and we are still trying to probe why this mix. And that is how we call our research in South as work in progress. It is still unfolding. Kerala, similarly, if you look at, there are very clear-cut indications about Pillais. Pillai is a word which denotes excellence. So Pillai could be any community. That's not, but one category of Pillais are Kaistas. Similarly, the Menons in Kerala, if you look at, the Nair community is layered community. So you have warriors, you have writers, and then you have lower caste, lower occupation holders also in Kerala. And therefore, we are looking at the Menons who were primarily into the writing job. And there are very, very close connection we are finding. We are yet to come to a conclusion, but the research is going on. Similarly, you will look at the Burmas of Kerala, the Raja Ravi Verma's family and people of that genre. They clearly appear to have been migrated from Chhattisgarh area at one point of history. Anyway, we have not brought all that in book until it is established, but because you asked me about this scenario of Kaistas in South, I gave you a complete picture of Tamil Nadu, of Karnataka, of Andhra, and of Kerala.
Okay, sir. Okay, sir. Okay, sir. And you call your research in South as work in progress. Why so, sir?
I call it, as I explained, I call it as work in progress because it is still progressing. You see, if you look at the history of All India Kayasth Mahasabha, which got established in the late 1880s, in the first few conferences, you had the office bearers of Mudaliars, you had office bearers of the CKPs, etc. It's very unfortunate that as we grow, we tend to forget about our own wider family. So later on, I see that the participation shrank. In the first phase, they were very enthusiastic. They became president, secretary, etc., of the All India Kayasth Mahasabha. But gradually, those brothers, didn't come together. So I look at it as a work in progress. As we progress, all these brothers who have been separated by the stroke of destiny and stroke of history are likely to come back, but it is still work in progress. We cannot claim that yes, Burmas are Kayasth, yes, Nayars are Kayasth, yes, Menons are Kayasth, yeah. But there would be a time, I have a feeling, that this research will establish very clearly that these are also Kayasthas and they will all join hands. Now, since you have raised this issue, Kiruthika, let me explain to you about the Ambatas, because their migration from the south of Kashmir is a great migration story. There are two great migration stories that you find in the book. One of Karnas from Bihar to Karnataka and Tamil Nadu and back. That's one migration trajectory. The second most important migration trajectory, which we have been very successfully able to take out in the book, is of Ambatas. Broadly speaking, they came from south of Kashmir. And if you look at the map very closely, the natural map, there are two doabs in South Kashmir. And when I'm talking about South Kashmir, I'm talking about undivided Kashmir, not just Kashmir of today. So part of the area would be in Pakistan today. Part of the area would be in Pakistan occupied Kashmir territory. But broadly, it's an area around Kandahar. It's an area around Peshawar. And there you find two doabs. There were three rivers. One was Jhelum, Chenab, and Ravi. So in one doab, Poru's rule was there. Porus, I'm sure you have read in history. There was a great fight between Alexander and Porus. In one doab, they were there. In the other doab, the king of Malas were there. There were two major satraps. There were two major satraps of Kandahar to India. First, he confronted a kingdom called the Kingdom of Kandahar. The king, for some strategic reason, decided not to fight. He was the biggest king of that area around Peshawar. And but his satraps did not give up. They said, no, we will not surrender. We will fight. So the first major battle was of Porus, that you know in history. The second was with Malav. And the Malav was a smaller kingdom. Their resources were also limited, but they were very, very brave people. So they decided to fight. And actually, they wanted to sort of align with a neighboring king called, I think, I'm forgetting the name. There was a neighboring king, but somehow at the strategic moment, the neighboring king could not join. So they fought all alone. And in this fight, they badly lost. But in the process, they also injured the leader of the Alexander army, that is Alexander, and it was a serious wound. And so much so that after, because of the wound, the Alexander decided not to advance. He decided to retreat. And they returned from there, and on way before reaching his home city, he died. That's one part. But when he got injured, he became so irritated with this community that he ordered his commanders to kill the entire community, wipe out the entire community. So they started killing not only the military component of their opposite side, but also the civilian component. And at this stage, some of the major leaders of the Ambattar community decided to migrate from there. So they migrated down. First, they came to Malav. First, they came to Mekala, sorry. In Mekala, what is Mekala? Mekala is the place which is Mahakala and Ujjain of today. Now, there is a subplot through this. To understand the bigger picture, you must know that which are the major two sources of this battle. The first source is a Greek source, a Greek historian called Diodorus. You know, always Alexander walked with his historians. There were 5 historians. And interestingly, all of them would observe a great battle. They would meticulously record without interference. Then they will compare their notes with each other. And the final narrative would become a part of the history, would be recorded only when approved by the king. That's Alexander. So that was the final narrative. So Diodorus was one of the 5 great historians of Alexander who saw this battle. And he writes that they fought bravely, but the luck was not on their side. That's the observation of Diodorus. He is one major source. The other eyewitness to this battle was Chandragupta. You will say, from where Chandragupta came in the scene? Actually, when this battle was about to begin, when Alexander was advancing towards India and he was almost about to, get into India, Chanakya, sitting in Bihar of today, which was a great Magad empire of that time, and the capital was uh, Patliputra, he anticipated that after his entry into India, the second major leap will be in the Magad territory. So he wanted to prepare himself. That time they were fighting battle with the existing regime of the time, that is Nandas, but they also wanted to prepare, even if they defeat Nandas, after that, if they have to fight Alexander, they should prepare. So he uh, prompted uh, Chandragupta to go to the border area and get embedded in their army. That's what this guy did. He went all the way to the border and got embedded in the army at a very, very insignificant lower position. And that practice you see even in the army today, in the paramilitary forces today. They hire local people for recce, for local intelligence, etc. It was not a unique practice of that time. He saw them fighting very bravely. But after the fight, when the Ambatas lost, and Alexander got injured, he decided to return. So Chandragupta also returned back to Patliputra. On return, he explained this to his boss, that is Chanakya, and he explained at length how they fought, etc., etc. And they decided that once they defeat Nanda, they should consolidate their empire by almost garlanding their capital with such brave people. So they decided to invite the Ambatas to the Patliputra area. By the time the Ambatar, as I explained to you, had already migrated to Mekala, so Chanakya and Chandragupta sent their ambassadors, emissaries to Mekala and persuaded 105 families from that region, Mekala, to come over to Bihar and settle. And they actually migrated from Mekala to Bihar along the river route. And they came into Aurangabad side of Bihar, and they gradually went to Gaya side and settled mostly in the district which were the core Magad Empire district of that time. Like, for example, they settled in Patna district, they settled in Nalanda district, they settled in Gaya district, they settled in Munger district, and these are all typical catchment areas of the Patliputra even today. Any Ambasta you from Bihar, if you speak to, they will tell you that I come from one of these region. And the village where they settle, that became their khas ghar. Khas ghar means special home. Whenever two Ambastas meet today, they will ask each other, what is your khas ghar? Khas ghar means which village you settle initially. So these are 106 villages. Another research team is working on that to identify each villages. I gave you this Bihar story to explain to you the other story. In Mekala, when 105 families out of 150 so decided to migrate to Bihar, a minority of them decided not to go to Bihar, they decided to go to South. And they went to Salem, then to South Travancore, and after a few centuries, we are told they also went to Sri Lanka as Ambattar. That's their migration trajectory. Now, these Ambastas, if you look at, they are the descendants of Dhanvantaris, it is believed, even today. So primarily they were doctors, traditional doctors, not the kind of doctor you see today, but they were traditional medicine experts. So in amongst the Ambatar, even today you will find that most of the Siddha, great Siddha practitioners in Tamil Nadu come from Ambatar community. When they went there, so naturally the surgery or medicine practice doesn't work every day. So for your livelihood, they were also skilled in the use of knife and razors, etc. So they became royal barbers. They also became royal priests. And some of their wives became midwives too. These are interesting narration, not coming from Tamil Nadu historians. This is coming from BP Sinha, who talks at length that how they gradually got absorbed in Tamil Nadu. They picked up the language, they picked up the dress. Today, you can't make out what is the difference between one Tamilian and Ambattar. So that's the interesting part of history which you see in the book. The book is still in progress, and when thanks to Arun, I would say, when we started by chance, and there I think Chandragupta was very kind to us, that he connected us, and he was very curious to know about Vaidyas. He was curious to know about Ambastas. When I explained to him the Vaidyas history in Bengal, that they were also Ambastas who went there, and when they reached Bengal, they started making medicines and distributing those medicines sitting on elephants. They will go from village to village to village, and they earned a lot of respect amongst people because they were actually serving people without any great commercial interest. So they became very respectable community of Bengal, and they became arrogant too. So the local Kayasthas didn't like, and till date the local Kayasthas do not like the Vaidyas. Vaidyas want to be associated with Brahmins. Brahmins don't want to call them Brahmins. So their position is very peculiar in Bengal. We are trying to sort of address this question. If you look at the debate in Wikipedia, etc., you will realize what kind of a crisis, identity crisis they are undergoing. But since they don't have a pan-India picture, they don't have the knowledge that Vaidyas also are in Maharashtra. General Vaidya, as you know, everybody knows about General Vaidya. He was from the Vaidya community, a Kayasth community of Maharashtra from CKP. So in Odisha, there are Vaidyas. In other places, there are Vaidyas. Some people have called themselves Vaidyas. They may not be Ambasta, but still they call themselves Vaidyas, etc. So because they don't get the larger picture, so they are a little confused. I explained all this to Arun at great length, and gradually he saw reasoning in what I was explaining. Then we cited those books. Then we cited the Wikipedia, etc. And today, of course, all of you are majorly connected. I'm very happy to say this and share this because, like electrical, it has a huge connecting effect. I have today about 10 Ambatars connected to me over phone, and they are all interested to know about the wider picture of what happened 2,500 years ago.
Super, sir, super. So a lot of information I learned today from you, sir. So these are really very new information for me, and it should be more useful for our future generation.
Yeah.
So, and one more question, sir. In our book, the first page starts with Vivekananda. So that you mentioned he was belonged to Kayasth community, even Netaji Subhash Chandra Bose also. So could you tell about them, please?
Surely. In fact, in the book, as I told you, there are 2 chapters on big personalities among Kaistas. One is a chapter called Role of Kaistas in the Freedom Struggle. That's chapter 1 chapter. The other chapter is called Hall of Fame. But other than these 2 chapters, in the beginning itself, as you have rightly mentioned, I have taken the inspiration from Vivekananda. Because Vivekananda was from Kayasth community. He was Bengali Kayasth. He was from the Datta community, and his name was Narendra Dutt, if you know. And he died at a very young age, but at that young age itself, he made such a big name for himself that I keep repeating that there are only 3 major Indian characters, not all Kaistas, whom I call all India characters. For example, Chanakya is an all India character. 2,500 years ago, he had a vision of nationalism, and he thought India should unite. India should be one. That's Chanakya. Then the second biggest nationalist that I look at is Shankaracharya, who traveled from south to east, to north, to west, and almost integrated by establishing the mathas all across. And today, I think even the ruling regime acknowledges a great deal about his contribution in putting India together. The third in the modern time, I would say the biggest nationalist I find in Vivekananda. And right in, right there in Tamil Nadu, where you have a Vivekananda memorial in Kanyakumari, you go to Almora, you will find his presence. You go to Rajasthan, you will find his presence. You go to Assam, you will find his presence. He was a truly nationalist character. But he was not one of those truly nationalist characters who would forget about his roots. When people questioned that how come a non-Brahmin is spreading the words of religion, he came out very strongly. And in Madras, after coming back from America, you know how he went to America and the speech made him world famous. And while he came back, he actually came to Madras. Today it's Chennai, that time it was Madras. And he gave a speech. And I have quoted a portion of his speech in the initial chapter itself, where he says that, look, we are not only the pen wielders. Of course, we take pride in the fact that we are pen wielders. We are also sword wielders. So he talks about the major kings, starting with Lalitaditya to Jaipal to Pushkin to Gautam Satkarni to Pala dynasty, and they were all super kings. They were not king of 1 or 2 years. They were there for at least 100 years, 200 years. They contributed so much in the making of this civilization. So with pride, he mentions all of that. And if you read that, then you really feel that you have a hair-raising experience about your legacy and heritage. So initially, when you asked me what inspired, in fact, the first inspiration came from Vivekananda himself. So that's Vivekananda. In very, very modern time, just around freedom struggle, you find another such a great inspiring character called Subhash Chandra Bose. Who doesn't know Subhash Chandra Bose? And in fact, I would request that those of you who have not actually seen should see the film made by Shyam Benegal on Subhash Chandra Bose. It's called The Unforgettable Hero. It is there on YouTube. You can see it free. And beautifully made film, very nicely documented. You will understand the greatness of the man from Bengal. And mind you, he was Bose. Bose actually were Srivastavas of Kannauj, who migrated from Kannauj to Bengal. And he was given the title of Kulin Kayastha there. Those are given in the book, very interesting part. And the Bose today do not know that they are from Kannauj of UP. So here is a guy who was almost like a lion from Bengal. He went right up to Peshawar, then went to Germany, Germany to Japan, Japan to Burma, and created a consciousness which was, unthinkable today. In fact, they say that he galvanized the spirit in the armed forces, and the naval riot in India actually clinched the deal so far as freedom is concerned, because the Britishers realized that if the army, air force, and navy, they are revolting, they can't hold the country anymore. And the last straw, I would think, was that naval revolt. And inspired by what? Inspired by whom? By Netaji Subhash Chandra Bose. Even his death became such a mystery that till date people are debating whether he died or he didn't die. There are stories about he becoming a Mahatma and he becoming a sage. The people say that so-and-so Baba is actually Subhash Chandra Bose and so on. And there are so many, you talk about Jayaprakash Narayan, who is the face of non-Congress major politics in India. And he was from Kayasth community. There's an ancient time, you see Lalitaditya in the early medieval period. And Lalitaditya's empire actually ranged from Turkey to Nepal and Odisha and down south with India. He's the guy who actually, the only king in India who beat up the Turks, the Russians, the Arabs on their own territory. No other king you will find. And so there is a saying that he fought about 100 battles and lost not even one. That was Aditya. He built up cities. You go to Kashmir, he was a Kashmiri Kayastha of that time, belonged to a dynasty called Karkota dynasty, and you can go and see his capital near Srinagar, which is called Parihaspura even today. He built up many temples, and the biggest sun temple in India, called Martandi Temple, is still there in Kashmir, Anantnag district of Kashmir. So there are very, very big character, and one of the major challenges that I faced in this book, whom to exclude. There were so many people, and till date, a lot of people complain, you have left him, you have left her, and I keep puzzled. So I devised a way of explaining. I said that, look, this is an illustrative list. This is not an exhaustive list. Illustrative list means you can still add and add and add. So I had to explain people like this that, look, I never claimed that it's the last word, it's the last list. It's an illustrative list, not an exhaustive list. So this is the big picture of big people amongst Kayasthas in India.
Okay, sir. So really very happy to know about this, sir, because our migration story was really very excited and very interested. And this is a new information. Vivekananda and Netaji Subhash Chandra Bose also belong
Yeah,
to Kayasth.
Kiru, actually, I forgot to mention that amongst the three types of Kaistas that I mentioned in the beginning, every category has very, very big people.
Okay, sir.
For example, Subhash Chandra Bose was a Bengal category, Chitraseniya Kayasth category.
Okay, sir.
Then Jayaprakash Narayan was a typical Chitragupta Seniye. Rajendra Prasad was Chitragupta Seniye category. Amongst the Chandraseniye Kayastha, Bal Thackeray, who doesn't know him? He established a very different kind of a political party, got into identity politics, Maharashtra identity politics in a big way. Before the Thackeray's, the Mudaliars were the kings of Bombay. Now it's called Mumbai. That time it was Bombay. And Mudaliars would actually rule. Then on the other side, you have General Vaidya from CKP community. You have, great general of Shivaji like Mr. Deshpande. So what I'm trying to say, if you go to down south, you have a Ramalingam. I mean, the temple itself, the entire half the Tamil Nadu worships that temple till date. You go to Shankar, Assam, Shankar Dev. I mean, he created such an impact, reformed the society in such a way that till date people don't get into the room where his statue is kept with shoes. That's the kind of respect he enjoys amongst their own people. They were all Kaistas. They were all Kaistas. Swami Vivekananda was a Kayastha. Swami Shraddhananda Saraswati was a Kayastha. Swami Yogananda was a Kayastha. So whether it is spirituality, or it is royalty, or it is science, or it is politics, or they are in Bollywood, they are there. And if you look at the book, then you will realize, my God, these are all Kaistas. We didn't know. They give you a sense of pride when you look at them, and their contributions were immense, and some of them were absolutely the top 10 ancient universities in India. 4 of them were built up by Kayasth kings. If you look at Vikramshila University of today, if you look at the 2 universities in Bangladesh, if you look at Ballavi University in Gujarat, and even Nalanda's renovation, not the construction, renovation, they're all done by Kayastha kings. So you can understand the contribution they made in the realm of education. Then the scripts, there are 4 major scripts in India. Currently the government of India's official script is Devanagari. Devanagari came out of a Bhatnagar king in Kangra, which is used officially across the country. Then Kaithi Lipi was the official script of the Magad Empire. Then Assam, there is a Kathli script. Proto-Bangla is a script. These are all contributed under the patronage of Kayasth kings. So their contributions are mind-boggling. And only when you start relating to what they did, what they contributed, you realize what a great heritage you and I carry. So that's the connect.
Feeling really very happy to hear this, sir. And one more question, sir. Already you explained Netaji Subhash Chandra Bose, Vivekananda, Sankaracharya. So they are belonged to Kayasth community, and except them, kindly explain famed peoples or kings, those who belong to our communities, sir. Especially, can you explain about the Ambattar communities of Ambattar community famed people's name?
You know, General S.K. Sinha was a big name amongst the Ambattar community. In fact, a number of 2-3 generals of generals of the army were from Ambattar community. Ambattar community, many of the big names in surgery, in medicines, we are all said to be the descendants of Dhanvantari himself. And across, in fact, you go to Patna, there is Dhanvantari Park, and they have their all kinds of herbal medicines plants there, and there is a big statue of Dhanvantari. Dhanvantari, the Ambattar community itself was a warrior and a doctor,
Okay, sir. Okay, sir.
and also a great pen wielder like you. They were teachers, they were writers and stuff. So these are the great thing. Even in South, if you go and look at, I talked to the Association of Mudaliars and I asked them a very simple question. Give me the top 3 icons amongst the Mudaliar. They said C.N. Annadurai. And I felt so happy.
Okay.
I felt so happy. Who actually turned around the politics of South. C.N. Annadurai is a very respectable name. So still some names are there which I would not like to mention unless I confirm. And they are very big names of South. Very, very big names of South. I mentioned only a few because this is a little touchy issue in South. And I don't want to be, so for the purpose of abundant precaution, I am mentioning only those we have confirmed. But there are still some very, very big names which are yet to be confirmed, but they are there.
Yes, sir. So thank you so much, sir. And what is the price of the book and how to buy it, sir?
Yeah, this is interesting, Kritu, because it also serves our interest as a publisher. The price of the book is rupees 3,000 in Hindi and also in English.
Okay,
Now, if you want to buy the book, there are 2 ways. One, there is a website called www.kayastencyclopedia.com. I repeat, www.kayasth, Kayasth, Encyclopedia, Encyclopedia.com. Kayastencyclopedia.com. That's the name of the website. If you go to the homepage of this website, there is a tab called Buy Now. So you have to press that button, and then they will take your address, they will take your mobile number, etc., etc. And finally, it comes to payment. You make the payment of 3,000, and immediately next day or a day after that, once the money is transferred, we courier it through very, very prominent courier agencies. We have hired 3 of them. So they take the book to your door. So it comes to your house within a week. That's one way. The second way is that those who do not want to explore this, they can go to the Amazon.com, look for Kayasth Encyclopedia, and there also the book is there in Hindi and English, and they can order there also. The difference is that perhaps there you have to pay the shipment cost. If you buy directly, the shipment is free. If you buy directly through the website, the shipment is free. If you buy through the Amazon, maybe you have to pay the shipment cost also, which is not much, yet it is there. So there are 2 ways you can buy this book. Still, if you have difficulty, you can always contact Kiru, because she is your daughter, your sister. And also Arun is your brother sitting right there. their numbers would be not a difficult thing for you to get, and they can connect to you immediately and help you in getting the book.
Okay, sir. Okay, sir. So thank you so much, sir. Thank you so much to spare your precious time with us. And today I know a lot of information about my community and the migration stories. Really very excited and very interested, and feeling very proud to be this community, sir. So
Yeah.
this is only for you. Thank you, sir. Thank you so much, sir. Thank you.
My pleasure, Kiru, my pleasure that you spared your time. And you are a teacher, your words are very important. Once you know the history, you will be sharing it with your students, you will be sharing it with your family members, with your children. So woman knowing all this is very important to me. And I think I'm very privileged that at least has gone to a very responsible hand. I'm also thankful to Arun, who has taken very, very keen interest. And but for his interest, all this connect would not have been possible.
Yes,
So
sir.
with folded hand, I thank him for this great exercise that he has done. And I really wish that at one day we all unite physically and we celebrate this kind of a great meet after 2,500 years ago. Thank you so
Sure, sir.
much.
Sure. Thank you, sir. Thank you so much. Sir. Thank you. Thank you,
Okay.
sir.
Bye.
Thank you, sir.